Okay, we are, check 1 2, we are live. Hey guys, my name is Thomas Brush and I make indie games for a living, and so does Brock Henderson. Brock, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your story and what you do.
Sure, I'm Brock Henderson. I'm an Iowa-based indie game developer. For the past 12 years, I've been supporting my family full-time on indie game development, and I have 6 kids.
Wow. So you've been finding income all this time to support 6 kids, and your wife, and pay the bills, pay the mortgage, which is pretty incredible. I'm right now I'm playing That Dragon Cancer. Can you let us sort of know how you're connected to this game?
Sure. So I helped make That Dragon Cancer. It's about the story of my friends Ryan and Amy Green and their family. They lost one of their sons, Joel, to cancer, and we made a game about it.
Yeah, it's honestly one of the most crucial moments of the indie game industry, for me at least, this game, because it showed how personal indie games can be. And that's really what we're going to talk about in this podcast, guys. Full disclosure, me and Brock, we're self-proclaimed Christians. So we'll talk about some Christian things in this podcast. We don't usually do that on my channel, but it's a huge part of my life. It's a huge part of Brock's life. And more importantly, we're just going to talk, connected to that, we're going to be talking about the emotional impact, spiritual impact, the worldwide impact of indie games, and also not only the worldwide impact, but the small, tiny local impact it has on your family. Brock mentioned earlier that he's okay with talking about this. We're going to talk about how it basically almost destroyed your family, which I'm getting chills now thinking about, because I can definitely relate to the emotional pressure that making indie games full-time puts on your family. So we're going to talk about all of the nitty-gritty. It's going to be a pretty open conversation, this one. So yeah, I'm going to run an intro and I'll see you on the other side, Brock. By the way, guys, feel free to download my free 2D game kit below. It's totally free. It's my treat to you. I used this exact 2D game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and then I got to play it in front of his subscribers, which was really awesome. So download that. Use it however you want. It's my treat to you. Yeah. Okay.
In the 12 years I've been doing this, I've worked on a variety of things. I started in web, doing some flash games and stuff. Kind of had a kind of long and winding path into game development. I spent quite a few years trying to get into games, doing that through 3D modeling, and ended up getting a degree in visual communications, and I focused on the 3D side. And after school, I went to Seattle and did some more professional training, and then spent a couple years just trying to get my foot in the door, and things just kept closing. I would get an internship with the studio, and the studio would shut down, so the game never came out, stuff like that. So eventually I started a design studio with a college buddy. And I thought that, if I couldn't make games, maybe I could make some really cool interactive websites and stuff, and Flash was really cool back then. So eventually taught myself how to program, and we started doing like Flash websites and some Flash games and different things. And then the iPhone came out, and by that time we had built our studio up enough where we could start taking some risks and start creating our own IPs and stuff. So we started a mobile game studio called Elevate Entertainment, and we put out about 10, 12 games on our own and did some client work as well. A lot of the games that we did were we were learning how to make games, and some of the games in the early days were pretty bad, but some of them were successful. We had one game called Float, which is all about keeping a balloon up in the air through various challenges and stuff, and that had almost 3 million downloads, and we got on New and Noteworthy a few times. So that was probably 5 years with Elevate, and the income there kind of slowly increased. We still did some client stuff, but our games for a number of years were able to sustain us. And then there came a time where I transitioned. It was, I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like it was time for me to move on. So I gave the design studio to my friend, and he's still doing that. And I took the mobile game studio. By that point, none of the games were really making any money.
So you weren't able to sell the studio?
No. I still have everything, but a lot of the games were made in Corona at the time because our friend made that game engine.
Oh, nice.
So, but yeah, so after a while, the long tail became pretty much nothing. And it was a pretty clear point in my life where it felt like God was saying that you had this time where you were kind of leading, and you got to I got to achieve a lot of my dreams, honestly.
Yeah.
Everything that I thought I wanted. I pursued, I was pretty ambitious at the time, and ended up, hurting my wife, hurting friends and stuff at times.
Meaning you were obsessive?
Kind of, yeah. It was, you want to will something into existence, and if it doesn't pan out, you just work harder.
Oh, yeah. I know the feeling for sure. I think a lot of people listening know that feeling. And by the way, those of you who have kids, let us know in the comments, because I know a lot of you have kids and you're currently making games, which is just insane. It's so much work. But anyway.
Yeah. So during that time, that was the real low point. I've been married 17 years now, and year 5 was our low point, and it got to a point where we weren't friends. We didn't like each other.
Why was it, if you don't mind me asking, just really quick, what was it about? What were you working on that made it? Was it the work that was the problem?
So I think a lot of it, a lot of my journey has been around identity, right? I used to think that success and awards and different achievements and stuff would bring me happiness, and I'm very thankful that I got to experience some of those things.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it didn't, and and that was good to learn at an early age. I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, so it was like a roller coaster with me, because my identity was all tied up in my work. So if the work was going well, then I was happy. But if things weren't going well, I got real low. So yeah, so I've been on this long path about learning about where my identity comes from, where to put it, right? Like the mountaintop experiences are few and far between. But you're also not you're not your successes, you're not your failures, and you're not who other people think you are either, right? Like the only place ultimately for me has been that is to hold on to who God thinks I am.
Yeah.
Like that's the only rock that I can be tied to, right? I think of it as like a boat being tossed around in waves, and the waves are the emotions and circumstances of life and everything. And depending on where you have your anchor, right? If the anchor's in your boat and it's what you think you are, or if you anchor yourself to somebody else, or it's not going to work out in the end, right? Like there are days where my wife doesn't like me, right?
Yeah.
I kind of have a brooding artist personality if I'm not careful.
Me too.
Um, yeah, so I remember this one night, like our low point, we got into bed and we were just inches away from each other and just looking at each other and um, but even though we were just inches away, we were miles apart. And sorry. Um, um, and we asked, how we got here because we didn't like each other. We had 2 kids at that time. I have 6 now. So my oldest 2 were still pretty young, and yeah, and we confessed our struggles and we prayed together that night, and that was a turning point. And like I said, for me, a lot of my stuff was all like identity based. For my wife, it was kind of more blame based, and some stuff going on with her. But
was your identity tied to your career? Just for clarity with my audience, was it tied to this career, making games and running digital studios and being an entrepreneur and getting awards?
yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's the only thing I ever wanted to do, and I thought that. Yeah, getting the prestige, the recognition, being able to work on big budget stuff, known stuff, having millions of downloads, all that stuff, I thought it was going to satisfy. And that's what I chased. So that's kind of the early part of my game career. So then there was a turning point where my partner and I both sensed that it was time for me to move on. And it was kind of this like supernatural drying up of work and some other circumstances around there.
Like God took things away from you on purpose?
What's that?
Did God take things away from you on purpose? Is that what you're saying? Supernatural drying up?
I think so. I think he wanted to get my attention, right? To make it, and also to kind of release me. And because like I really cared about my partner Brendan and the success of the studio, and like I wanted it to be okay for him.
Yeah.
And it has been. And but I don't think I would have given myself permission to move on, right? But so that happened, and then it felt like I was gonna go move over to a place of support for a while, and this kind of so that dragon cancer was kind of happening at that time, and so Ryan and Amy and Josh had been working on it for I think a year and a half or something at that point, and so we started talking. And they did a Kickstarter to raise some additional funds to fund it, to finish it, some finishing funds. And they brought me on for the last year plus to help finish it. And that was a crazy, hard time, but beautiful. Again, we were making a game that we didn't want to make, right? Like when they started making the game, they thought Joel was going to be miraculously healed, and the game was going to be about that.
I know, I remember that. And for those of you who don't know what that dragon cancer is, Brock, do you want to sort of clarify?
Sure, yeah. It's kind of like this interactive poem. It's about the journey with the Green family going through their son Joel's journey with terminal brain cancer.
Yeah.
And so we were making a game that we didn't necessarily want to make, right? We didn't want to tell that story.
Yeah.
But so much good has come out of it, right? And people in the Christian realm, right? It's people talk about giving their testimony, and it's this their story with God and their faith and that kind of thing, right? And that dragon cancer is their testimony, and they're wrestling with faith. And what happens when you feel like God's disappointed you and he didn't come through the way that you thought?
Yeah.
And that, that opened up a lot of doors, because people respond to that kind of honesty and that openness. And
well, I think side note, I think a lot of people think Christians are like just oblivious to the fact that the world sucks. Like I think they think that, not everybody, but I think a lot of people think, well, Christians, they just pretend that God is gonna make everything right. Like our faith is like, well, God is gonna fix my problems if I pray hard enough. And like if you read the first book of the Bible that was written was Job. It's not Genesis, it was Job. The very first book written. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but the first book was Job. And the whole point of the story of Job is God says at the end, he says, I'm God, you're not, and I can do as I want because I'm the writer of this story, right? And so the proper, you correct me if I'm wrong, Brock, but I think the proper Christian worldview that we should have is, I don't know what God's doing because the world looks pretty crappy, but I'm going to trust that he's the author, and I'm going to trust in his screenplay, in his story, and I want to be a character in that story. And we have hope that one day it will all be made new. One day, I don't know when, but that's the hope, right?
Yeah, God doesn't promise roses. He doesn't promise an easy path. And actually, if we're serious about pursuing him, he actually promises trouble and hardships.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is that he said he'll be there with you. So yeah, he's with us through it. Yeah. So we made that dragon cancer, and I've made a few more games with Numinous after that. Actually made another cancer game. I don't know how many people can say they've worked on 2 cancer games.
Yeah,
on 2 cancer games.
Good grief, man. That's deep.
We've worked on some VR stuff too. The Area Man Lives just came out. Originally, that was a game for the Google Daydream, and it was episodic. And partway through the production, they canceled us, and so kind of had to pivot on that. Thankfully, we were able to partner with Cyan and kind of reimagine the game a little bit and re-release it on the Quest recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've also worked on a game called Painted Waters that's out in like small release, and that's been focused on kids with disabilities. There's SMA is a disease that basically cripples kids, and so we made a game specifically for them that they could play with their eyes and a single button. If it's not treated, SMA basically cripples you within a couple of years, and so the kids have very limited movement.
So in a way, you've just been pushed into these projects that are painful to make, but serve a purpose.
Yeah, I don't. They're games that wouldn't be made normally, I think, and if profit was the only motive, they wouldn't be made, right? But they're serving the underserved, and they're touching people in their time of hurt and need, right? And that's really important.
Well, I found it really interesting when people were playing that Dragon Cancer. Right now I'm watching Markiplier play, and PewDiePie played it, and I remember it's cringy in a way. The part about Jesus, it's cringy. I put that in quotes because you're watching people who aren't necessarily interested in what we would call the gospel, the good news of Jesus, a lot of people don't want to be preached to in a game, right? But we're watching YouTubers just sitting there crying, listening to this message, right? And I was surprised to see all these mega YouTubers playing this game and crying about this message. It's pretty remarkable, right? And I think it's, in a weird way, it's kind of a risky marketing decision to say, no, we're gonna make this game have a lot of Christian stuff in it and just hope for the best. Have you ever felt hesitant to do that, to put to interject religion into your games? Have you ever felt hesitant about that?
You can do it in a way that puts people off, in a way that's really inviting and enticing, right? Like the gospel is a love story, the best love story ever told. So that's beautiful and inviting. But preaching and Bible thumping and different things like, puts people off.
Yeah. I think wrapping the Christian message in the story of that dragon cancer is particularly interesting because, like I was saying earlier, most people from the outside looking into the religion think all I've ever seen is hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Right? But when a Christian says, no, I struggle just like everybody else, and I have my doubts too. And me personally, I'm doubting all the time. What a Christian would say, I'm doubting Thomas. In so many ways, I want proof. In so many ways, I want to say, okay, if this is the common argument, if God exists, he wouldn't make a world like this. That's actually one of the top arguments I hear all the time. If God is real, he wouldn't let dragon cancer story, he wouldn't let this unfold on this family. And I go, I see where you're coming from. Like, the honesty of this game, the honesty of these kinds of games, I think is crucial, especially right now in this era. You were talking about identity earlier. I was wondering if we could circle back to that.
Yeah.
What do you mean? This is important. What do you mean that game dev and your career became your identity? Because right now we live in an era where identity is everything. Mm-hmm. Like, being categorized in a group is so important to people. And I don't want to play that game. Like, I'm not into being a certain category. Even being labeled a Christian, I don't even really like that category necessarily. Or being a quote unquote game dev, I don't like that category either. I'd much rather just say, no, I'm a person who struggles and I have all these idiosyncrasies and I'm constantly changing. So what do you mean you had sort of an identity crisis? What does that mean?
I think ultimately it comes down to tying things like worth and value and just the thoughts that you believe about yourself, where that all is coming from, right? I struggled a lot in my life with like self-hatred and perfectionism, and so it's very easy if I fail at something or don't do something well, or right, to start believing that's somehow a part of me, right? Like I'm a failure, or start going down that path of negative thoughts. That's all. That stuff is temporary, and so that can't be how you define yourself. Right?
Isn't there the argument though that there's a legacy that you're leaving behind? I hear this a lot. Like, I'm leaving behind a legacy. Can that be your identity?
I think leaving behind a legacy can be a very good thing. And whether people know it or not, everyone's leaving behind a legacy, good and bad, right? Your grandkids are going to know about you, what kind of man or woman you were, right? So I guess I wouldn't say that that's your legacy, that's your identity, but you hope that your legacy flows from your identity, right? It's
Yeah.
outworkings of who you are and why you were here, and the love that you're able to give,
Yeah.
right? What good you're able to do in the world. So
My struggle. By the way, I'm completely on board with you. I'm playing devil's advocate.
no, that's good.
I'm totally on board in the sense that all identities eventually collapse and turn to dust. Even if it's a legacy, Shakespeare's legacy will dissolve. It'll be gone one day. And there's this weird thing that I feel, and I think most people feel deep down. Like, I'm wondering if it's core, especially to you guys who want to make games. There's this core feeling of like, I need to make this eternal. I need to make me eternal. I need to lock in a permanent identity so that I'm safe, so that my value and my worth, my self-worth is known and it's safe and secure. And I'm curious if you have to just forget about it. Like, it's not real. Like, you cannot keep it. You cannot keep your identity. It's going to go away. The worth, it just eventually will dissolve. Your worth is going to just disappear. And I think that's what drives me to God, because I'm like, then I'll just cling to God. Yeah. This entity that created this world, this interdimensional entity, the author of this world, or in the Bible, Jesus is called the Word with a capital W, the Word, the coder, the capital C coder of this world. If we can find out who that is, maybe somehow, and cling to that and just say, hold me tight, bro. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of a fool and I'm temporary. Can I cling to you though? Will you give me your eternal value? And it definitely sounds like a pipe dream. You know, it sounds fake. It's like, come on, man. Like, are you really going to cling to this spaghetti monster, as Richard Dawkins would say, right? And my answer is, yeah, I'm going to cling to that, because what else am I going to cling to? So I kind of go the Pascal's wager route, which is, I'm going to die. I'm going to lose my worth. So what am I going to believe in? What am I going to choose to believe in? A lot of my faith comes down to, okay, my career as a game dev, my career as an artist is pretty much going to dissolve. So might as well choose to cling to something that's, I believe, is eternal. Mm-hmm. And that's that. I'm not going to question it. Like, I've had my doubts, but at some point, I believe you just got to choose. Just pick something. And I believe that what I've picked is correct. I believe that. But I'm never going to really, I don't think, at least in this life, know for sure. But it really does, I think everything does funnel down to this identity crisis that every human being has. What drives so many of us wanting to make a studio and make games and get great reviews from the press and make a YouTube channel, it all comes from this core desire to prove that we're worth it. And I don't know if that's actually sustainable.
It's not. And the beautiful thing about it is that God, like, flips that on the head, right? Your worth, your all that, you can't achieve it. God imbues it upon you, right? Like, he loves us, and we have value because he made us. We're not an accident. He created us for a time and a purpose. And when he looks at us, he's crazy about us. And it's like when I hold my youngest son, Bridger, he's 6 months old, and there's nothing that he can do to make me love him more. And he doesn't have to prove anything. And I just love him. I'm crazy about him.
Yeah.
And that's how God is with us.
Yeah. Man, I feel the same way about my kids. I'm getting chills. You're making me choked up. You need to stop crying. I feel the same way about my kids. I think a lot of people probably go, well, then why did God make such a crappy world? And my answer is, I don't know. I don't know. But what am I supposed to say? You know, like the way Jesus puts it is when it comes to the prodigal son parable is, it's not that God kicked out his son when his kid wasn't behaving well. It was that the kid abandoned God. And God just sort of waited. The father just waits and he says, I'm ready when you are. I'm right here. Right? And so the way that I try and wrestle with this thought process is, my theory is God is right there. And he's ready to hear you when you're ready to talk to him. And you don't always get an answer. You don't always get an answer. And that's where the metaphor or the linking, what is it called? The comparison to being a father on earth breaks down, because you would probably answer the phone every time your son called. But sometimes God doesn't. Often he doesn't. So it is I understand if my audience is listening to this that are like, that doesn't make sense because God doesn't answer me. And perhaps though, Brock, he answers you in the way that you don't want him to. Mm-hmm. Like he did with you and your wife. His answer wasn't, hey, I'll make you successful. His answer was, how about I just sit quietly and take everything away from you that you're obsessed with?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thankful for it. Like, I wish I hadn't had to walk through that, but I'm very thankful on the other side that I did. That was a formative time. And maybe, just maybe someone listening in, maybe I can save you from some pain, right? You don't have to make the same mistakes I did.
So the practical solution here is, guys, if you're obsessed with your video game that you're making, if you're obsessed with entrepreneurship, the moment you make that your identity, you're in for some pain, because you're setting your anchor into something that sucks. Like, it doesn't suck. It's just not. It's like investing in crypto. You have no freaking clue what's gonna happen. So be careful. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Everything in life is a bet. Like, everything is like, even the way you think, where you invest your thoughts, you're making a gamble that this is a good place to put your thoughts. And what happens is, I think a lot of people, most people, and this comes to the conversation of loneliness, which we were having prior to this conversation, or prior to hitting record. I think the reason everybody's so lonely right now is because they're investing all their time in social media and comparing themselves to people, and comparing themselves to me, and me comparing myself to other YouTubers, and me comparing myself to other video game developers. It's a really competitive era of human existence. Did you feel competitive when you were hyper obsessed with your career?
Oh, I'm competitive as hell. I'm still competitive. It'd be really easy for me if I start spending a lot of time on social media and stuff to be jealous, to fall into some of those things, because I am really competitive, and it can be a really good thing. But if you focus on it too much, right, like it can lead to a lot of negative cycles. I mean, Paul talked about, like, if you're going to run a race, run it to win. Paul, I'm sure, was super competitive.
Paul, the apostle.
From the Bible. Yeah, the apostle Paul, sorry.
Yeah, so that how did that manifest with your wife? Were you just you weren't present. You were always working. She was talking, but you weren't listening.
Yeah, definitely some of that. You work from when you get up till late hours at night, and maybe a quick bite to eat together. But it was, you justify it, right? We gotta pay the bills. So another thing that I did is, because I was so ambitious, I put a lot of unneeded pressure on myself. So in the course of 3 months, we got engaged, got married, we bought a house, and I started a business. And all within 3 months. And that kind of set us on a path that was super intense for a really long time. And yeah, so in addition to the long hours, just my mood. I was in a bad mood a lot of the times because things don't go right, and you put out a game and it doesn't sell well, and there's a lot of things outside of your control. You can do everything perfect and still not end up with the result you want sometimes. And I guess the question is, what do you do about that? For me at that time, I took it really bad, and was grumpy and short with my wife and different things. And she was trying to run the household, and I was trying to run the business. And
2 kids at the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've had kids most of my marriage.
6 kids. 6 kids. Well, dude, from what in talking to you, they're lucky to have you as their dad, man. Like, to have an open father who's emotionally available is a big deal. I'll be open too. Now that you're open, I'll open up. I've had seasons where I'm not very present either with my kids. Sorry. Just lately this year, because I'm just so obsessed with work and with I'm running a school, and I'm making games and having publisher conversations with publishers and investors, and always talking to a camera. And I'll go downstairs after work and I'm just not there and my daughter, she brought me a note. She likes to scribble notes on paper, and she'll give it to me, and I just completely ignored it. Like, I didn't even say anything. I just pushed it aside, and she was just staring at me. I didn't even know she gave me a note, because she says it says I love you, but it doesn't. It's just scribbles. But I'm just thinking about work. I'm thinking about games. I'm thinking about profitability, taxes. So running a studio and being an entrepreneur is vicious. It's vicious. And the greatest challenge isn't making money. The greatest challenge isn't making a great game. The challenge is staying in the lives of the people around you, because it's so easy to take them for granted. Like, it's so easy to just say, "Oh, they'll be fine. I'll be present tomorrow." And it doesn't work that way. You need to get present now with your kids, because it's gonna be gone like that, like in a blip. So it's hard. Yeah. It's really hard.
How old are you, Thomas?
31.
Okay, I'm 41, so I'm a little further down the road, but
4 kids more down the road too. So
yeah, that's one thing. It's the last couple years, everything has just kind of fallen apart for me in various ways, career-wise, and
the last couple years.
Yeah, last couple years. So a brief aside, and then I'll. So we were living in Colorado and near Numinous Games with my friends there, and this opportunity came up to go be a support family for a missionary base in southern Spain. So we thought we were going to do that. So we sold everything and thought we were going to go to Spain. But through a series of events, COVID and some other things, everything went sideways. And so some game stuff that we were working on fell apart, and found ourselves living with my in-laws for 18 months.
That's brutal. I've done it. It's hard.
They're wonderful people.
Of course.
And they're super generous. But yeah, it's but it's, I feel like it's been another season where God has kind of had me slow down a little bit, and I realized that I hadn't enjoyed my kids the way that I wanted to, a good chunk so far of my marriage and time with them. But this last 2 years have kind of been like a forced sabbatical for a time, and things have slowed down. And that wouldn't have happened if I was heads down on a game.
Yeah.
So I'm really thankful for that, because I feel like I love my kids more and appreciate them more now than ever. And people in general too. Like, people used to be a means to an end for a lot of ways, right? You're looking for angles, you're looking for a deal, something, how can they help you? But I just enjoy people now.
Isn't that weird? It's like, I'll have conversations with my friends, because I'm pretty introverted, and I'll be like, it's such a bad question, but I say, so you like people? Like, you enjoy being around people? And they're like, yeah, like, it's great. And I'm like, it's a chore for me to be around anybody. Like, I feel at most peace when I'm in front of my computer making worlds, aka playing God. That's when I'm at the most peace. Then when I leave my office, the tension starts to build. And it sucks. It's so frustrating that that's how it is. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with my wife of trying to explain it. Like, I can't explain it. It's not that I don't love people. I don't think. It's that I think I just love games and I love my job too much. I don't know how to fix it. And you were talking about how you're grateful that it was taken away from you. And I believe that God will take things away from you if you don't hold it loosely. If you hold it tightly, he's gone. Yeah. And one of the recent situations I've been in is last year, the year before, they were killer years. Like, and we've had a profitable year this year too. Don't get me wrong. It's been great. And we're good. Like, it's not like we're in debt or anything. We're doing great. But about recently, we got hit with a huge tax bill, like a big one. And it's not that I don't pay my taxes. It's just that the taxes just keep coming. It's like, what in the world? If they just keep, I'll get an email from my CPA one month and it's like, oh, by the way, you still owe. And I'm like, what? I thought we got this under control. And they're like, no, we forgot about this. So it's just taxes. So we got hit with a really big bill, and we're good. Everything's good now. But prior to that tax bill, and it was a hard one, it was rough. Prior to that tax bill, I viewed money so loosely. It was like, what? And I would have conversations with people, and they would say, we want to do this. We want to go on this trip with you guys or something, with like friends. And I'm like, then come. And they're like, well, we can't. And I'm like, why? And they're like, money. And I'm like, well, it's just $3,000. I was so callous. And then God took it. And then I remember walking through my garage coming into the house recently, and I said, thank you so much for taking it away. Like that financial stability, thank you so much for taking it away. Because now I view every dollar and every amount of income that I can make as a huge blessing. And then I'm gonna take care of it better. Because my mind was changed through that pain, that the suffering of, like, when something gets taken away, all of a sudden weirdly enough, you're more peaceful. it's like you're more grateful, and that being grateful allows you to actually enjoy the things you already have. So and this is obviously clearly a very casual way of looking at it, because I know a lot of you listening have lost way more than that. You've lost family members, so I get it, and it's really hard to be grateful. But like small stuff like money being taken away, it's a blessing in disguise. I think, for sure.
Yeah, it's painful to go through that, but like I said, I'm always thankful. Those are the key moments in my life that I look back upon, and they changed me in really important ways that will hopefully have ripple effects throughout the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And you brought up money, like, yeah, my career, the last 12 years have been about learning to trust God with money, right? Kind of grew up in a house where my mom worried a lot, and a lot of that kind of rubbed off on me. And, Jesus told us, don't worry. But that's hard. It's hard. Like just recently, a week ago, I was helping my friend with a project, and funding was pulled. And so I got to find work. Like it's going to be July 1st here. I need money. Our family doesn't have a big runway. So that fear and worry it just hits you, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So the funding was pulled for this project. Can you repurpose the project and get funding elsewhere?
Not this particular thing. So we've so another thing. So I have a small studio called Pixel Pug, and our focus is on creating community through games. And so the last 3 years we've been waiting for the Intellivision Amico to finally come out.
What's that?
We've been waiting for the Intellivision Amico to come out, which is just a small console that they're bringing out. It's a kind of like a retro console, and we had a deal for 3 launch titles basically, and we've had the games pretty much ready since E3 2019, and they're small party games. But in the course of the last 3 years, like the release date has been extended and extended and extended, and at this point, I don't even know if the console is actually going to come out.
Wow.
So that's that's kind of one of the things that's gone sideways the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I've done everything within my power to hit the milestones and everything, but like I said, sometimes things are outside your power.
So you've had a career of sort of this finding funding, losing funding. Where are your revenue streams in this last? You said it was a decade of running a studio, and variety of different projects and freelancing and all of that.
So
go ahead.
So we've had some funding through game sales. Right back in the Elevate days, that's primarily how we were funded, and then we did a little.
What is the Elevate days?
Yeah, and then with Numinous, it's been primarily.
No, I said what is the Elevate days?
I'm sorry. Elevate Entertainment was a mobile game studio I had for like the first 5 years of my indie career.
Okay.
And then with Numinous, their studio that I'm just helping out with has been primarily client-funded projects because we did That Dragon Cancer, and then we've had some like patrons, I guess. There was some pharmaceuticals that had us do a couple games, that other cancer game, Galaxies of Hope, and then also Painted Water. And then platform title, Google funded Area Man Lives that used to be called Untethered. So it's kind of a mix between like client funded projects, work for hire, and game sales. So.
Okay. So what advice do you have for my audience to specifically when it comes to the client side? Because that's an interesting side of game dev that I've never done. What does that look like? Like, how do you find these clients that want to do these projects?
I'm probably not the best, but so for a lot of the client stuff on our end, they kind of came to us based on our original work, and I'm not a big business marketing guy. I've primarily been focused on the craft of game development, and there's so many. Game development is so broad. I've decided to focus on a narrow sliver, but I want to go really deep.
Right.
So I'm really interested in the craft of it and game design and coding. So I haven't been that much on the like marketing biz dev side.
Yeah. So the projects sort of just fall in your lap and you work on them, basically.
Kind of. I mean, that's God. This is gonna sound so I don't know, silly maybe to some people, but God has always provided what we needed when we needed it, and it might not be the avenue or the opportunity that we initially thought, but He's always provided something, and good has always come out of it.
Yeah.
Being a single income indie developer with 6 kids shouldn't probably work. But God has been faithful, good, and I'm thankful. I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed that I get to be an indie developer. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do.
Yeah. So, what's the game plan? What's your thought process of, like, because you said it was these last 2 months have been really rough, right?
Yeah.
What's the thought process on how to survive, and what's to keep you from going and getting a job you hate?
Good questions. I have a handful of games I need to make before I die. And at the moment, I don't exactly know how to go about that. I used to think that I knew, but like I said, things have just kind of fallen apart in different ways. And so I'm holding everything really open-handed. There's potential opportunities on the horizon. I don't know if they'll come through or not. But I'm trying to be open and then praying a lot. And also, I have a really good group of friends that we look out for each other and help each other whenever we can. And that's been key for my career. But yeah, so I have this game about my marriage. I want to make a game about my marriage, and I want to make it with my wife. It's a musical. It's called Our Life, and we spent a year pitching to Apple with a fellow traveler, and we worked our way slowly up through the approval process. And then when we were at the top, it looked like they were gonna approve it and fund the whole thing.
Yep.
They had a strategic change
for Apple Arcade.
Yeah.
It was Apple Arcade.
That's Apple Arcade. But yeah, so like I said, I don't know. I have a handful of games I need to make.
So, but they eventually turned it down.
They did. They kind of had a whole strategic change of direction from some of the.
They changed the name of my game. So yeah.
Did they?
Oh yeah. It was and if Apple's watching, I'm okay. It's fine. But it was called Once Upon a Coma, and they felt like that was too scary. So, I don't know why, but they changed. We changed it to Never Song because they requested a name change, and they had other changes, and I was like, not too thrilled about this, but they were minor, and they've been great. And I do recommend people work with Apple, but I can imagine something that is very personal for you is going to have some things that they don't like, right? So what was it strategically that they didn't like?
I think from what we were told at the time is that they were kind of moving away from some of the more narrative driven games.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word I got, and that might be just the harsh reality of a business reality of them. Even for Apple, right? Like a company with pretty much endless money has real business things that they need to hit and stuff. So but yeah, I don't know, that's what I was told.
Okay. Did you reach out to publishers for funding for that?
I did. It's through life circumstances and stuff. I haven't been able to nail down a vertical slice at the moment. I have a whole bunch of small pieces, prototypes. We have a pitch deck. We have a pitch trailer that's kind of more of like a high concept feeling, kind of a art piece thing. But because it's a musical and I'm working with a professional musician and there's a bunch of moving pieces that I really need just like a chunk of money to be able to do it
Yep.
at once. So.
Yep. Well, dude, I mean, if you need help with that, you said marketing isn't your thing, and I would say pitching to publishers is primarily a marketing effort.
Yeah.
If you need help, let me know, because that's my bread and butter. Like that's what I do. Let me know if you need help. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Well, it's I kind of want to leave my audience with one theme throughout this entire conversation. And that is that game dev is really, really hard. And it creates existential crises in everybody who does it. It's a weird thing. I don't know why, but with game dev, depression and obsession and anxiety, it's like the hallmarks of the job. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's this way. But for me, what I've found helpful is to just open up my hand and just not think of it so much as being mine, and it's not even me. It's almost kind of just a silly little hobby. Even if it makes $2 million, it's still a hobby, and it's not a huge deal. It's not a big deal,
It's a wonderful gift. It's a very good thing, and it's important to find the joy and the love in the craft and the activity, regardless of what the outcomes are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I focus way too much on entrepreneurship as opposed to the craft. And I was talking to my wife about it last night. I was like, I kind of want to get back to being obsessive about the craft and less about the outcomes, financial and press and publishers and all that. So it's a good reminder, dude. It's a really good reminder. But man, we're hitting an hour here. That was I'll tell you, that was a deep conversation. It was rough for me because in all the good ways, because you're hitting on things that I feel strongly. And yeah, I mean, it's a really good conversation to have. Is there anything else you wanted to leave with the audience? Any links in the description that you want me to put there to point people in the in your direction?
Yeah, say, like Thomas said, this is game development is really difficult, and you don't have to do it alone. I would just encourage anybody, if you're looking for community, if you're looking for people to share the journey with you, we have a a Discord server at PixelPug, and we're about trying to create community, and a healthy community that encourages one another and celebrates each other's successes. And yeah, so come join our community.
Absolutely. Yeah, guys, click the link below. There will be a link down there with the Discord server. And leave a comment below what you thought about our conversation. I love conversations about faith, even if you disagree. I want to hear about you guys disagreeing about our conversations regarding faith. That's great. It's good. I love conversations. Well, Brock, it was great talking to you. This was a really good conversation, man. I really appreciate it. I feel like I just had a good therapy session. So this was really, really good. I'm going to run an outro really quick, and then I will see you on Discord after I finish up the outro.
Thank you.
Get over here. Get down. Hey, thanks for watching. By the way, if you haven't downloaded that free 2D game kit below, click below. It's my treat to you. I used this game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and I actually got to play it with him in front of his audience, which was really cool. This game kit is totally free. It's my treat to you, and you can use it however you want. You can make a commercial game and make $1 million off this game kit. I don't care. Or you could just use it for a hobby project. It's my treat to you. And by the way, if you haven't clicked like, that would mean a ton to me. Hit subscribe. And also, this is important, hit that notification bell. Here's why. If you get notified of when I'm live, you can watch me make my next game, and let me know in the chat what you think about the game or any ideas you have. And you might just show up. Your chat might just show up in the next video that I upload. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I love you too.